Okay, it says that we're live.
Hey, everybody.
We have 0 viewers yet, but we'll see that number go up. And
okay. Hey, Caylin. Hey, Chris.
Oh, we can watch each other.
Cool. A thumbs up from someone sitting on the couch across from me saying that we are seen. So we can go ahead and get started. I'm really excited to be here. My name's Caylin. I'm with Danny and with Chris, and we've been organizing this for a couple weeks now, figuring out how we can provide some, I guess, entertainment as well as connection for people during this time where we're disconnected physically, but have lots of technology at our disposal. So it's been an interesting time. The three of us were just talking about how we've all had to come in from the outdoors and figure out how to work these indoor technology devices. So we'll see how this goes, but fingers crossed, everything will go smoothly. So yeah, welcome everybody to our live storytelling event. We each have a story to share today and a little bit of a discussion around the stories and what they might inspire after we tell each one. So that will be the format. We'll each tell a story, then we'll have a small discussion, and then the next person will tell a story, and there'll be another small discussion. There's also opportunities for you to interact as the audience. So if you want to type into the comments on the YouTube, that should show up on our end. I actually see, we can see you. So great, we already have a comment that's come in. So we can see you're typing to us. It might be a little bit delayed, but we'll do our best to interact how we can. So if you have something that you want to share throughout our storytelling, please feel free to leave it in the comments. What else? Danny or Chris, do you want to say anything before we get started with us?
No, I'm all excited. Looking forward to doing this and hearing your stories and sharing my own as well.
Yeah, me too. I'm very excited about this, and slight nervousness at going out to the whole world. Potentially. I know not the whole world is watching, but I'm very grateful for this opportunity to chat with you two, and I'm very grateful also for just today having a bit of time to ground myself before coming out here by doing a little bit of gardening and being a little bit of outside. I know that not everybody who's listening to this or who may listen to this has a garden, and so I just feel really grateful for that experience, I suppose, of being out there connecting with nature today. And part of what this storytelling is about connecting to nature through the stories. We don't have to be out there physically, and hopefully some of these stories will transport us to places beyond these four walls that I'm sitting in, and that you guys might be listening from as well. So over to you, Caylin.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. All right, so I'm going to be the first storyteller of the day. So I'm just going to boot Danny and Chris out of the screen for a minute.
Bye.
All right, so my name's Caylin, and I have a website called Forest School that I've been writing blogs for a while, and a couple blogs that I've written about storytelling. So if anyone's read them, then you might be familiar with my storytelling journey. But I used to be terrified of telling stories. I was not a storyteller, did not consider myself a storyteller, but really admired those who could, including Chris and including Danny. So that's why I'm really honored to be here with the two of them today, being able to do this. But then there was one day where I overcame my fear and decided to tell a story, and stumbled my way through one that I had heard and really enjoyed, and then fell in love with it. And then what I started to do with my groups is write my own stories, stories that were based on the plants or the animals or the location where we were, and also the interactions that we were having as a group. So things that were really applicable to what we were experiencing together. And so the story that I want to share today is a story that I wrote last year for a really special kindergarten class that I was working with. And we would go out to the forest once a week, and it was just by the school grounds. And it was an area that was full of white pine trees. So it was, a very special story for this group, and I'm going to share it with you today. And it's called Why Mice Squeak. So here we go. So did you know that mice used to be the loudest creatures in the entire forest? They squeak now, but the noise that they used to make was a really, really, really loud squawk. That's right, mice used to squawk. But then one day, there was a really cold wind that came in from the north, and it brought in clouds, and everything became dark and really, really chilly. And a mouse that lived in a little house inside of the trunk of a tree, it woke up that day and realized how dark it was and how cold it was. And it started to shiver a little bit. And when it opened its mouth to speak, instead of its usual squawk, it realized its throat was really sore and it couldn't really speak. And all it could do was do a little squeak. It had lost its voice. She'd lost her voice, this little mouse. She knew, oh no, I'm not feeling very well and my voice is gone. I know what I need to do. There's Grandmother Pine. Grandmother Pine is where we go to get our medicine. I'm going to visit her and see if I can get something to soothe my throat and get my voice back. So she walked over to Grandmother Pine, big, big, big pine tree with whorls of branches and needles that hung down from the ends of the branches. She knocked on the trunk of Grandmother Pine. And Grandmother Pine noticed the knocks on her trunk and she bowed down to look at who was knocking. She saw a little mouse just on the ground, but Mouse wasn't speaking. She said, "What's wrong, Mouse? What do you need?" And the mouse couldn't talk. All she could do was go and point to her throat to say something was wrong. And Grandmother Pine knew that Mouse needed some medicine and that her needles were what held the medicine. So Grandmother Pine bowed down her needles and allowed Mouse to take a handful. But before she let Mouse go, she told Mouse, just make sure that you take only what you need and use everything you take. And Mouse nodded and said, yep, okay, gratefully, and took a little bunch of the needles and went home. When she went to her little burrow under the tree, she took the needles and she made a pot of hot water and she poured into a teapot the hot water and the needles and then poured herself a nice cup of pine needle tea. She held it in her hands, her shivering hands, and it warmed her up already, and she took a sip. And after a few moments, she opened her mouth again and she realized she could squawk. The squawk was back. The medicine had worked. And she felt so great and happy again. And then she started to think about what Grandmother Pine had said about these needles and how special they were and how to take only what you need and use everything you take. So Mouse started to think, what else do I need? Well, I could use a comfier bed and the needles are so soft and they'd make a really lovely place to lay down. And, well, I need to clean my house a little bit and I could really use a new broom. And I think these needles would be so perfect for making a small little broom to sweep my house. And I don't know, it's kind of dreary in here and I need some decoration. So I think I could use the needles to make a beautiful wreath for my door. Yes, that's what I need the needles for. And so later that night, once it got dark, little Mouse crept up to the pine tree. She scurried up to the top and she started to harvest more of the needles. She grabbed a bit here, grabbed a bit there. She thought, no, I definitely need this. So I need a little bit more. I need a little bit more. She grabbed all these handfuls. Meantime, little Robin was up in the trees and heard rustling in the branches. And she looked over and she could see there was Mouse up in Grandmother Pine starting to take more and more needles from the branches. And the Robin was confused, but it was a little dark and she couldn't tell exactly what was happening. So she just decided to watch. Then the Mouse took the bunches and bunches of needles that she'd collected and brought it back to her home, made herself a nice bed, made herself a new broom, and decorated her door with a wreath. Then the sun rose, and the next morning, there were a few other animals in the forest. There was skunk, and there was frog, and there was rabbit, who all woke up feeling a little bit odd and a little bit rough and knew that they needed some medicine too, and would go to Grandmother Pine. So they all walked over to Grandmother Pine and looked up and were absolutely shocked that her branches were empty. The needles were gone. And we're really confused. What had happened? Where had Grandmother Pine's needles gone? Where was the medicine that the animals could use in order to feel better? And Robin spoke up at that point and said, I know who took the needles. You need to go and see the Mouse. So all the animals walked over to the mouse's house, and immediately when they came up to the door, they saw this beautiful wreath made out of green pine needles. And then they knocked on the door, and Mouse opened it and said, "Oh, good morning. Hello, animals." And just around the corner of the door, they could see a nice bed made of pine needles. They could see a broom in the corner, fresh new broom made of pine needles. And they could see a pile of unused pine needles just sitting in the corner that Mouse hadn't even used. So she'd taken definitely more than she needed and used, or hadn't even used everything that she'd taken. And they felt really hurt by that. And they told Mouse, you know, we need medicine too. And you've taken so much that there's not enough left for the rest of us. And it dawned on Mouse what had happened. And she started to feel really guilty, really, really guilty about what she had done, and started to understand, I didn't actually need all of these things. I shouldn't have done that. What can I do to make this right? So she thought about it and said, I need to go see Grandmother Pine. So she and all the other animals went up to Grandmother Pine, and Mouse knocked on the trunk again. Grandmother Pine leaned over, and Mouse said, "Grandmother Pine, I'm so sorry. I realize now what you meant when you said take everything that, or take only what you need and use everything you take. I took more than I needed, and I shouldn't have. I'm really, really sorry." Grandmother Pine accepted the apology and said, "I'm glad that you understand the meaning of that now, Mouse. Sadly, though, I can't grow my needles because I need warmth and I need sunshine in order to grow. And it's still cloudy and cold. And so I won't be able to grow any more medicine for the animals for quite some time now." And Mouse's heart sunk. She thought, oh my goodness, what have I done? I need to do something to make this right. So she thought, and she thought, and she thought, what can I do? I'm only a little mouse, but there must be something I can do. And then she had an idea. She remembered she was the loudest animal in the forest, and maybe there was something she could do to push all the clouds away. So she told everybody, plug your ears. All the animals put their paws and their fingers and other things in their ears to make sure that they were protecting them. And the little mouse took a deep breath and let out the biggest squawk she had ever given. And the ground rumbled and the clouds started to part, and the sun came out and it started to shine on Grandmother Pine and all of the animals. And Grandmother Pine could now start to regrow her needles and start to make more medicine for all the other animals. And the animals cheered for Mouse and said, "Yay, thank you, Mouse." And when the mouse opened her mouth to speak, the only thing that came out was just a little squeak. She'd lost her voice. And that is the reason why mice squeak today and they don't squawk. The end. So I'm going to bring Danny and Chris back now.
Yay!
Yeah, I love it.
Lovely story.
Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, that was just a story that was really relevant to what we were experiencing as a group out in the pine forest together. It was actually in February of last year, so just over a year ago, and a cold front came in. It was really cold. And what we did after that was we actually made pine needle tea with the group. So we gathered some pine needles from the white pines that we were near, and then we made a little fire and boiled some water, and then made and tasted pine needle tea together, which was really, really amazing. So that's something that you can connect with a story like this.
Yay.
Yeah. So any thoughts or things to share, ideas from you two?
Yeah. Do you want to go, Chris? Or...
Okay, I'll go first. Although I think the way my screen works, it goes Caylin, Danny, Chris. So I'm happy to go second, but for me, it's easier if you go first.
Okay,
this time.
I will go.
Okay, you go first. Yeah.
Okay. So I love there what you just said, Caylin, at the end about how that story emerged from your actual forest school session. And sometimes when I do the storytelling training, we talk about something that is story as a seed. So we may see something out in the woods, which really catches our attention and raises our curiosity, but how can we understand it in a deeper way? And sometimes using a story to link that thing with maybe an activity like the the tea is really, really lovely. So how can we put a story into that seed and grow it into something else? So I love that little link there at the end. I love your little use of props as well then, with the teapot and I like that. And there are many valuable messages in that story as well. All the best stories have a message, I think. And that idea of only taking only taking what you can use is important. But also that idea that she didn't, as a species, we want to survive, and resources are really, really important to us. And sometimes we take more than we need unintentionally as well. But she realized that, and she came round and she asked for forgiveness, and she realized her ways and made the change. So I love that. The mouse came good.
I think it also, just before we give the floor over to you, Chris, I think that also thinking about what you need and how we oftentimes think that we need things, but if we really think hard about it, is it a need or is it not? Just what are the things that we can actually go without that we think we need, but we really don't?
Yeah. Like the medicine or the broom or the art decoration. Yeah, I mean, they all feel really important, don't they? But I guess if everyone needs the tea for medicine, maybe we can let the floor be unswept for a while.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, that's pretty much what I was going to say, actually, about the medicine and the priorities and things. I was thinking of and about how now this, for us, springtime, about foraging, and that's really in my mind at the moment, going collecting, just taking what we need for our families, and that leaves the rest for the other creatures. When I'm sort of doing foraging stuff, I have this kind of rule of hand where I'll take one portion for myself, and then I'll make sure that there's 4 others for other creatures, maybe other foragers as well, who might be following along behind me. And that's a little bit like pine needles, isn't it? They're all sort of hanging from the tree that way. And I was thinking about tree climbing too, because as an activity that you can do off the back of that one. I love climbing trees, but different trees have got different strengths to their limbs, and so some trees a mouse would be able to climb up quite easily. Pines are usually quite strong, but other trees, you'd have to a pine tree might not be able to take a big bear, for example, or something. So good to learn about the different qualities of woods from of the trees. But indoors, I guess you can get everyone sweeping your house, can't you, after listening to that story? Making decorations. I think there's a lot of people who've got very clean houses at the moment who've running out of things to do. So, or their houses are quite messy. I know that ours is getting a little bit sort of things scattered about the place.
We're stuck in it.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
Cool.
Fantastic. Well, should we? Oh, sorry, Danny. Did you want to say something?
I was just going to say, you said something then, Chris, that about how the different trees will support different animals and different sizes of animals, and that's a great thing in terms of taking what you need. Sometimes nature will determine that based on what it offers. So, for example, the bear couldn't take things from the top of the tree because it would be a risk to it, whereas the mouse could. And it made me think of grey squirrels and red squirrels, and that whole dynamic of nature will support certain things, but it won't support others, and that is a driver sometimes for what we need and what we don't need. So
It's great.
Yeah, good thoughts.
Great story.
Yeah, it's lovely. And well done for telling it, sort of first time out there in the big world.
Yeah, I've only told that story 3 or 4 times, so but I'm glad for the platform to do it. All right, shall we move on to our next story? Are you ready, Chris?
Yeah, ready to go. Absolutely. I'll begin. So yeah, moving on from Caylin's story, one of the things I really loved about what she was doing there was also moving her hands and using her body to make shapes of the tree and things. And that kind of relates a little bit to me and this story, which the sunlight has just come through the sparkly things in the window, so I have a light show as well. Hooray! But now what I was going to say was, usually with storytelling, I find it really hard to sit still and tell a story. I'm moving about and I'm doing stuff and I'm sort of enacting the story with my body. So I'll just do my best to do this one sitting from my sofa. So this story is a story about the interconnectedness of all things, and also about having to put up sometimes with the sort of annoying things that your neighbours or your people in your household do, and finding ways to adapt round it. And it comes from this book here. It's one of my favourite books by Margaret Reed MacDonald, Earth Care Tales. And so this is my version of it. It's called Gecko and the Fireflies, and because this comes from Bali or somewhere around there, Vietnam, Cambodia, I've got one of these little instruments, which is a jaw harp, mouth harp, and you do that and it makes a sound. Gecko had spent a long day out hunting for flies. He was pretty tired, so he climbed up into his little house and was trying to go to sleep when, flashing on and on, on and off, on and off, on and off, on and off, outside of his window were the fireflies. So he turned over and he tried to get to sleep, but all night, on and off, on and off, on and off, went the fireflies. So the next morning, poor old Gecko, he was pretty tired. He went to the chief of the village and he said, "Chief, I hadn't get any sleep last night because the fireflies were flashing on and off, on and off, on and off all night long outside my window. Please, can you ask them to flash somewhere else, please?" "All right then," said the chief. I'll see what I can do. You go back and try and get some sleep, and I'll call them in." So the chief called in the fireflies, and he said to the fireflies, he said, "Look, guys, you've been flashing on and off, on and off, on and off all night long outside of Gecko's window, and he can't get to sleep. So could you go and flash your light somewhere else, please?" The fireflies said, "Well, I'm really sorry, but the trouble is that we flash on and off above the poos that the buffaloes do on the street. So there's a big poo outside of Gecko's window, so we have to flash on and off, on and off, on and off to make sure that nobody steps in the poo at night." "Oh," said the chief. "Okay, I'll tell Gecko. Off you go." So the fireflies went out. Well, that night, Gecko, he came back from, he went out and did some hunting. He came back home after a day's hunting, pretty tired, and he got down into his bed and he was just trying to go to sleep as the light outside dimmed and the sunset had passed. The lights started to flash again, on and off, on and off, on and off, on and off, all night long. "Ay, ay, ay," said Gecko, and he tried to turn over in this way and that, but he couldn't get any sleep. So the next morning, with even bigger bags under his eyes, he wandered off to the chief and he said, "Chief, look, didn't you ask the fireflies to stop flashing outside my window?" And the chief said, "Well, I'm really sorry, Gecko, but the trouble is the buffaloes do poos, when they come back from their work in the fields, and sometimes, well, there just happens to be one outside of your window, and the fireflies do this excellent job of flashing on and off above the poo to stop people stepping in it. So I'm afraid we can't at the moment." "Oh," said Gecko. "Well, why didn't you ask the buffaloes to go and poo somewhere else then? Oh, well, I suppose I could, said the chief. All right, you go back, see if you can get a doze, go and get some sleep, and hopefully tonight you'll get a good night's sleep. All right, Gecko wanders off. Gecko. Well, the chief calls the buffaloes into his office, and he said, "Guys, is there any chance you could poo somewhere else? Because you've pooed just outside Gecko's windows, and the fireflies are just flashing on and off, on and off, on and off all night long, and Gecko can't get any sleep." Well, said the buffaloes, the trouble is, sir, that when it rains in the afternoon, just before we come back from the working in the fields, the rain makes these big potholes in the street, and so our job is to fill in the potholes with our poo to stop people falling into the potholes. Oh, said the chief. Right. Oh, okay. Well, I'll tell Gecko. Off you go, guys. Nice one. Thanks. And off they went. Well, that night, Gecko comes home. He's had a little bit of a doze during the day, then he went off to go and get some food, and then he came home, climbed up into his little room, and he got down into bed, and he was just going to sleep when on and off, 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 all night long went the fireflies. Gecko couldn't get any sleep, and he was getting more and more miserable. And the next morning, Gecko. He walked over to the chief's house and he said, "Chief, I still can't get any sleep because those buffaloes are still pooing outside of my window. Didn't you? And the fireflies. I mean, can't you ask the buffaloes to? Didn't you ask them to poo somewhere else?" The chief said, "Well, the trouble is, when it rains in the afternoon, there's potholes in the street, and the buffaloes fill up the potholes with their poo to stop people falling in. So we can't. I'm afraid, that's just how it is." "Well," said Gecko, "why don't you just ask the rain to rain somewhere else then?" "Oh, well, I suppose I could talk to the rain gods. Yeah, okay. Go on, off you go. I'll see what I can do." So Gecko goes off. Gecko. He has a little doze. He goes off hunting, and during the afternoon, after it had rained, the chief asked the rain gods into his office, and he said, "Look, guys, is there any chance you could rain somewhere else? Because Gecko, he can't get any sleep at the moment because there's a pothole outside of his window, and the buffaloes are pooing in the pothole, which means that the fireflies are flashing on and off, on and off, on and off all night long." And the rain god said, "Well, the trouble is, one of Gecko's favorite foods is mosquitoes, and well, the mosquitoes need somewhere to live. So it just so happens that we make these potholes all over the place, and they've got to be somewhere. Otherwise, there aren't any potholes for the mosquito babies to live in." "Oh," said the chief. "Right. Okay. Well, I'll just have to tell Gecko then. Thanks for coming in. Off you go." Well, that night, Gecko, he came home after being out hunting in the afternoon, and he tried to get some sleep. And just as he was going to sleep, you can join in if you like, on and off, 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 all night long, went the fireflies. Well, by the morning, Gecko was so tired, and his eyes were just big bags underneath him. And he walked into the chief's office, and he said, "Chief, I still can't just get any sleep. Didn't you ask the rain gods to rain somewhere else?" And the chief said, "Well, I'm really sorry, mate, but the thing is, the rain gods, they make puddles, and they make potholes, special potholes for the mosquitoes to lay their eggs in, so that the mosquito babies have got somewhere to live. And I've heard that mosquitoes are one of your favourite foods, aren't they?" "Yeah," said Gecko. "Well, they've got to live somewhere, haven't they?" "Yeah, I suppose so," said Gecko. "Oh, all right then." So poor old Gecko, he went home, Gecko, and he was so tired. that he stayed asleep all day, and he woke up in the evening, and when the fireflies started flashing, Gecko, or on, off, Gecko didn't try to go to sleep. He went out to hunt mosquitoes. And aren't we all grateful for that? That is the end of the story. Great. So, thank you very much. And I chose to tell that story just because I think we're all living with each other in a small space at the moment, and sometimes we've got to learn to adapt and kind of put up with each other's things that might just annoy us sometimes, and other times, well, actually, something that somebody does that annoys you, there may be a gift in it. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. I don't know what to say now, other than what did you think? Reflections on the story. What did it mean for you?
Do you mind if I go, Danny, or do you want to go?
No, please do. You go ahead. Yeah.
I was just reflecting on the firefly connection, because I grew up in Hawaii where there were no fireflies, and then I moved to California, and then I moved to England. No fireflies, or at least not in the places I lived. And then I guess about 3 years ago now, I moved to New Hampshire, and that was the first time I saw fireflies. And so I just, as soon as you started talking about that, the memory of the first time I saw fireflies came back to me, and just how magical that experience was, and how it's something that you miss when you don't go outside at night or at dusk. And I think a lot of people sort of think when it's dark or it's getting dark, that's the time to come inside, and we're not really connected to the darkness or the outdoor world when it's nighttime. And that experience of seeing the fireflies and actually going out, like making an intention each evening when they were around, like, let's go out and see the fireflies. And remembering how much happens. It's the whole natural world doesn't just go away at night. There's stuff happening, and we often miss out because we're not participating. So it's just a thought of remembering that there's lots of special things that happen at night, not just during the day.
Yes. Caylin, the first time I ever saw fireflies was in New Hampshire too.
Woo!
Yay, New Hampshire. And yes, absolutely magical. Where I worked with a boy at the time who would go out at night when everybody was supposed to be inside, and he would catch fireflies in a jar, and I would find them under his blankets, his bed, where he'd been catching them, and bringing that part of the outside in so that he could be with it. And I think that's how magical they are, fireflies. Yeah, they take us somewhere else. Chris, I love that story. I love. There's something about stories with poo, which are always fun.
Yeah.
And as the story was going on, I was thinking, where is? I could see the connections happening, but I was thinking, how is it going to tie back to the gecko? And yeah, I really love that. How it all came around and all came together. And I was thinking about activities that we could do based on that. And I couldn't get the buffalo poo out of my mind. It was like the main part kept bringing me back to it. And I was thinking, there are some children that I work with that I know would love to get mud and roll it and make big piles of buffalo poo. Yeah. So that's what I was thinking of during the story, as well as how beautiful it was, but it's like how big of a pile of buffalo poo we could make with some of our preschoolers. Yeah.
I love that. Chris, someone's asking what the instrument was called again. Do you mind reminding us?
Yeah, they've got lots of different names from different places around the world, and I call that a jaw harp. And somebody once told me, oh, that's a Dan Moi. I think that's the Vietnamese word for it. So if that helps. Yeah.
Thank you.
I almost got up to dance, Chris, when you were playing it at the start. Had it not been for these, I'd have been up on my feet, and especially when the crystal started to spin.
Yeah, I thought that was quite timely, wasn't it?
It was
Yeah, it's good.
perfect. It was
Yeah.
perfect. Chris, I loved how you took on the characters throughout the story as well. As all the different characters came in, they each had their own little personality through you as well. I
Yeah.
really like that. Yeah, I really like
Oh,
that.
thank
The
you.
chief in particular.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were a great chief.
Excellent. Yeah, I was just thinking about activities before we pass on to you, Danny. And yeah, suggestions for activities off the back of that story. One of the things that I like doing is doing a little weather log, and so sometimes people can, find out what time of the day it rains, and sometimes in places it's a regular thing. It's quite nice knowing what time the sunset is as well, because especially where I live, the sunset changes quite a lot, quite rapidly at the moment. It's basically 2 minutes a day is the difference, and so it's quite nice logging that sunset moment. And also, rather than taking exercise during the day, as Caylin suggests, if you can, why not go out for a night walk as well, because there's many wonders at night as well as there are during the day. So anyway, a couple of simple suggestions. Danny, are we going over to you next?
Yeah, and just before I remove us, Chris, someone's asking for the title of the book, so I wonder if you can just leave a comment and let us know what the book is. I
don't think I can write.
Okay.
I might be able to. I'll write it in. There it is. Earth Care Tales by Margaret Reed MacDonald. I'll try writing it in now.
All right, over to you, Danny.
Super. Hey, everyone. So I'm Danny, and I've got a couple of projects that I work on. One is Community. The other is a new one called We Be Kids. And storytelling is a big part of my work. I've been doing storytelling for many, many years. For me, I introduced story into my work as an outdoor educator because I thought it was a really lovely way of helping people understand themselves, each other, and the world a little bit more. I saw a quote that always sticks with me that says, people don't remember facts, they remember stories. And I really love that. And I think it's true as well. As a child, I remember being stuck away, and I used to get these cassettes and I put them in, and the cassette would read stories to me. So story is a big part of what I do. And I'm going to tell you a story today that I heard many years ago. I can't remember who I heard it from, but I know that over the years I've adapted it, and I love that about stories as well, how we can adapt them to the places that we live and the people that we work with as well. So here we go. We'll tell you this story. If there's anybody listening from Ramsbottom, there are parts of this story and places in it where you might recognise. You see, I am from Ramsbottom, which is a little place in Greater Manchester. And if you ever go to Ramsbottom, in the centre of Ramsbottom, there is a big vase that is on its side. It's part of a sculpture trail. And a lot of people come to see this vase. But what they fail to see is in front of this vase, there is a rock. And it's a rock that is about if I was standing up to about my chest. And it's a very, very special rock because a long time ago, something amazing happened at this rock, something that changed the course of the entire universe. You see, this rock, which is about as high as my chest, at the time of this story, was a mountain, one of the tallest mountains in the world. And it was a very important mountain because at the bottom of the mountain was a huge lake. And this lake was filled with the most precious water in the whole of the earth. And the reason why it was the most precious is because it was the last bit of water in the whole of the earth. All the oceans had dried up. All the seas, all the rivers, all the lakes, all the lochs, all the ponds, all the springs were all completely dry. All except for this big pool at the bottom of the rock. And the reason why all of the water had dried up is because up in the sky, unlike today when we have one sun, there were 6 suns. Can you imagine a world with 6 suns shining down beating their heat onto the ground. Well, it wasn't a great time to be alive. You see, the suns were so hot that they turned all the soil to sand and nothing would grow. There was hardly any water to drink, so people were very, very thirsty and hungry. And the people couldn't go out and do their things either because it was so hot the sun would scorch their skin. So a lot of people stayed indoors. But one day, one of the men who lived, he'd had enough of this. And he came out of his house. He said, something must be done. We have to get the suns down from the sky. And he called a big meeting of people. And all the people gathered round and he said, does anybody have any ideas? What can be done to get the suns down from the sky and put an end to this scorching heat? And there was a silence. And then somebody stood up. He was a burly man. He said, I am the greatest ladder builder in all of the world. Bring me your sticks and all of your rope, and I will build a ladder so strong and so long that it will go all the way to the suns, and I will climb that ladder, and one by one I will pull the suns down from the sky and bury them in the sand. Now the people in the crowd, they started to chuckle and laugh. Somebody stood up, they said, you can't do that. Nobody can build a ladder that goes all the way to the suns. It is too far. And even if you did, what would you lean the ladder on? For if it touched the sun, it would catch fire and burn and turn to ash and come tumbling to the ground. Ah, said the ladder builder, of course. So they asked again, does anybody have any ideas? How can we get the suns from the sky? And somebody else stood up, holding a rope. He said, I am the greatest lasso maker in all of the land. Bring me your rope and I will make a lasso so long and so strong that it will reach the suns. I will lasso each one of the suns and pull them down to earth, bury them in the sand. Again, people began to chuckle. They said, you can't do that. Nobody can make a lasso so long that it goes all the way to the suns. And even if you did, as soon as it touched the sun, it would catch fire and burn and turn to ash and come tumbling to the ground. Ah, the lasso maker said, of course, I didn't think of that. So they asked one more time, does anybody know how we can get the suns from the sky? After a long silence, a lady stood up. She said, I am the greatest archer in the whole of the world. I make my own bows and I make my own arrows. My bows shoot arrows further than any other bow, and my arrows never ever miss their target. Tomorrow I will climb to the top of the mountain, and from the top of the mountain I will shoot the suns from the sky one by one. Now the people began to chuckle again. They said, you can't shoot arrows all the way to the sun. It is too far. And even if you did, as soon as the arrow hit the sun, it would catch fire, burn, turn to ash, and come tumbling to the ground. But the lady was defiant. She said, I can and I will. Tomorrow I will climb the mountain. Come and see. And the meeting ended. And people dispersed back to their houses. But the lady went off into the forest. And she went to the forest because she knew that with such a big task, she was going to need a new bow. So she popped into the forest and she cut herself a small piece of willow. And she chose willow because willow is very bendy. And she knew that every good bow needs to bend. She then got some string and she tied a clove hitch knot. And she chose a clove hitch knot because it's a gripping knot. And she popped it over the end, like so. She then turned it and did the same on the other side. And then she had her new bow. She was ready. She went home and she slept, but she woke the next day filled with excitement. She walked to the bottom of the mountain. It was a beautiful day. The sky was blue. The suns were shining bright. The water in the lake was crystal clear. The reflections of the suns beaming down onto the surface. The lady began to climb, and she climbed and climbed, and by the time she got to the top, there was a great crowd at the bottom. She reached into her pack. She took out her first arrow and she put it on the bow. She reached. She pulled the arrow back and she aimed it high up at the first sun. Everybody took a deep breath. But just before she released the arrow, she turned and she pointed it down into the water. She shot the arrow. It flew through the sky and it entered the water right through the center of the first sun. People were amazed. They watched as the reflection of the sun in the water began to break up and the crystal clear water began to turn blood red. Everybody looked up into the sky. There were only 5 suns. She reached for another arrow, and again, just before she released, she pointed it down and through the center of the reflection of the second sun. Again, it broke up, more blood poured into the water. People looked up. There were 4 suns. She did it again. 3, and again. 2, and again. Till there was 1 sun left. She reached into her pack and took out her final arrow. She placed it on. She aimed high and then turned. But this time, before she could release the arrow, the sun, having seen what had happened to its friends, shot across the sky and hid behind the horizon. The bright, hot world turned dark and cold. The people at the bottom of the mountain cheered. Hooray, the suns are out of the sky, they said. And the lady came down and they had a huge party. A party that went on and on and on into the night. But this night went on and on and on and on and on. You see, the sun was so afraid that it didn't want to come back for the next day. And the people now found themselves locked in a time of darkness and cold. Still nothing would grow. There was still no water and still they couldn't go about their days. So they called another meeting. The same man came out. He said, we must get that 1 sun back in the sky. What can we do? And people thought, somebody shouted out, send the lady. She shot the sun. She should bring it back. But the lady couldn't go. In fact, no people could go. The sun was too afraid of them. Somebody suggested, let's ask the animals for help. And they said, yes, let's ask the animals. Let's bring the king of all animals, the fiercest animal of all. For that animal will let the sun know that it can come back. Yes, they said, bring out the lion. So they brought the lion, and the lion climbed to the top of the mountain. From the top of the mountain, it put both of its paws down. It shook its giant mane. It took in a deep breath, and it let out the most almighty. Now the sun heard this noise, and it popped its head up, and it looked around. It saw this huge beast, and with no hesitation, it dropped down again, even more afraid than before. The people said that didn't work. We need an animal less fierce than the lion. They said yes, but something grand and big. Yes, people agreed. They said bring the elephant. So they brought the elephant, and the elephant climbed the mountain. Boom, boom, boom. And from the top of the mountain, it flapped its ears, it lifted its trunk, and it let out the most almighty. Now the sun heard this again. It popped its head up and it looked around, but it saw this big grey beast, and it popped down again. People said, that won't do. We need something else, something more colourful, something less frightening. They said, yeah, let's bring a bird. They said, yes, bring a peacock, because the peacock is the most beautiful of all birds. So they went off looking for a peacock, and they were gone for a long time. But when they returned, they brought with them a rooster. People said, a rooster? A rooster is not going to call the sun back. But they said, let's give it a try. So they put the rooster down, and the rooster hurried up the mountain until it got to the top. Now, if you've seen a rooster, you will know that on the top of a rooster's head, it has this red floppy thing. It's called a comb. Well, in the time of this story, it didn't have that comb, and I'll explain in a minute. It just had beautiful feathers. And the rooster stood at the top of the mountain, and it ruffled its feathers up, and it shook its head, and it took in a deep breath, and it called out, cock-a-doodle-doo, cock-a-doodle-doo. Now the sun heard this sound, and it popped its head up, and it looked around, and as it looked, a sunbeam caught the feathers of the rooster and revealed its beauty. And the sun came higher and higher and higher, and the rooster called out, cock-a-doodle-doo. And that is why there is one sun in the sky today and not 6. But normally at this part of the story, people are thinking, is that true or is that false? And in your lifetime, you're going to hear a lot of stories. Some are true and some are false, but only you can decide. It's not for the storyteller to try and convince you. But there are 2 clues in this story that make me think that it is true. You see, every day after this particular day, every rooster that came into the world just a little bit differently. It came into the world with its comb. And if you look at the comb of a rooster, you will know that it is blood red, as a reminder of the day that the pool filled with blood. And if you look really carefully at the comb, you'll notice that it doesn't have 1 point or 2 or 3 or 4. It has 5 points. In remembrance, 1 in each remembrance of the suns that were shot from the sky. And if you're still not sure if this story is true or not, then there is something that happened yesterday and today and will happen tomorrow, which makes me think that it is true. And if you've ever been lucky enough to live by a farm or go on holiday to a farm, you'll know that still to this day, the sun waits behind the horizon every morning for one creature to call out and let it know that it's safe to come back. And that creature is the cockerel. Thanks for listening. Water. Hope you enjoyed that.
Yeah, fabulous.
That was great.
And of course, with more time, in real time, with people around, we can then make bows and learn the clove hitch knot and work a little bit with willow and stretching willow and bending willow. So yeah.
I'm going to go and look at a cockerel as soon as I can. I just want to go look at it and waffle.
Check how many points it has.
Yeah, I've never done that, so I'm curious, and that's one of the beauties of stories, isn't it? It's like, the curiosity is fired up, and off we go. We want to go and discover stuff.
Yeah, I've never wondered about the comb of a rooster, but now that's all I can think about.
Yeah.
Or why it's the rooster that called in the morning as well.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good.
Oops, you nearly lost me there.
Yeah. I was a bit concerned that you might actually make the bow round your headphones at one point. Yeah, something to think.
I hadn't even thought of that, so it was complete fluke that I didn't. But like you, Chris, I'm a real fidget as well with stories, and I'm
Yeah.
quite animated in the stories. So
Mm.
doing it tethered is difficult.
It is
But,
strange, isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah.
it is strange.
Oh.
Makes you realise just how much we use our hands and how much we use our bodies as storytellers as well. So when you're kind of in a box and tethered to something, it makes it more challenging. But I guess we'll learn these new ways.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd just like to give a lot of thanks to all the comments that have been coming in. I don't know if you've seen them, Danny, but there's lots of comments about your story there, and well, all of our stories actually. But the enchantment. If you click on the bit that says live comments,
I see.
You can see there's loads of them. Yeah, look at that.
Wowzers.
So
thank
everyone.
you,
everyone for all of that.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for stopping by, everyone. I've had a great time.
Yeah.
And I mentioned to Caylin before, this is the first time I've ever told stories in my slippers. So
it's a new age.
A new age.
Yeah. That was. I just wanted to comment quickly that I really, really love that story. I love stories that build connections between the things that we take for granted as just being in the world that we are today, and then thinking more about the reasons or the stories behind why they are that way, and thinking about how there once was a world with 6 suns. I just really loved that connection. And also I was thinking as well about activities that could be related to this, or experiences, and the reflections of the water. And that I just kind of got stuck on that a little bit in my head, of thinking about ways that we can interact with water, and the reflections that are shown in that, and how we can create even our own art, maybe even figuring out cool locations, or with a little pool of water, or even just putting a mug of water and seeing the reflection of the sky and taking photographs of that, or just watching it and just having a different perspective of the world around us through the reflection of water is something that came to mind.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, one of the things I wanted to feedback was I really, apart from it just being mesmerized and really watching you and enjoying the journey that the story was taking me on, and up to the top of the mountain with all those people below, and that moment of suddenly, aha, the unexpected twist of firing into the pool, was the sense of place. I love stories that connect into local environment, and how that talks about that rock by the vase. And if I ever go to Ramsbottom, I'm going to be straight back into that story straight away. Yeah, love it. And people must have stories, and people who are listening, it must have stories about local landmarks and things, and those are so important to keep being told. It's vital. It keeps the land alive.
And people are, sorry, I was just going to say, people are asking questions like, does anyone have any favorite stories, or and also, Danny, they're asking where did your story come from? And I'm just inviting people to leave in the comments any inspirational stories you have, or books that you know of, or even just personal story topics that you like to share. Feel free to discuss that in the comments.
And I'd just like to apologize to listeners that I can't type a response to the questions, otherwise I would be able, I would type some of them there. But anyway,
I'm not sure how to do that either. I don't have that option. I don't think.
Maybe we can figure that out for another time. I'm not sure the technology. I can, because it's through my account, I guess. I'm not sure how to make it so you can too.
Maybe we can later add to the chat. I don't know, but I would love to respond to those. I can see them popping in. So
maybe we could do it by tuning into the live stream on YouTube and type them in there. Is that possible? I don't know.
Try it.
Yeah,
I don't know.
We'll try it. I'll have a look. I'll see what happens.
I would love to. I can see John Cree has asked the question there about where that story came from, and I read it in a book over 10 years ago, and I have since tried to find that book, and I don't know what it was or where it came from. I was in the US when I discovered it. I just don't know. I'm not sure where it came from. I wish I did know, but I don't. Sorry, John.
Great. Well, any more thoughts? We've been here for about an hour now. It's been phenomenal. I can't believe how quickly that hour passed. That's what stories do, right?
Yeah.
They change how time passes.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, any more thoughts before we finish for the day?
I've really enjoyed being taken out of the moment. You know, everything else in the world was not with me. I was here in this kind of flow of the storytelling with you three, and that's been a really nice experience in a way, to be doing the live flow thing, connecting 3 different places in the globe. And yeah, I'd love to do some more next week or some other time. But yeah, it seems to have worked, doesn't it? So that's great.
Yeah.
Storytelling can sometimes seem quite solitary because you're the storyteller, but to join 3, like the 3 of us together, is nice. And I'm loving seeing those comments coming in now, because before I couldn't see those, and I was just wondering if we were just telling stories to each other, which is great as well, because I loved your stories. But it's great to see that there's some people who can't go out and spend time in nature at the moment who are able to watch this and interact with us and get some kind of connection to nature through the stories. So that feels really lovely too. So yeah, I'm grateful to be able to do that, be a part of it.
Yeah, it's been wonderful just to see, because we can see the number of people viewing, and this video will also get posted to the YouTube channel for people to watch back later too. So it will be, you can watch it all over again if you need another break from the world this afternoon, tomorrow, in a week's time. And it's been great to feel, seeing the comments and just be connected to people all over the world right now has been really heartwarming for me. And I'm really grateful to you two. I had this inspiration of an idea to host this in the middle of the night, like at 3 a.m. a few weeks ago, and really wanted to do a storytelling live stream, but didn't feel, I was like, I'm such a baby when it comes to storytelling. And then the 2 of you popped into my head, and I thought that would be cool. So I reached out, and I'm really grateful that you were up for it and that we made it happen. And that there are comments coming through. When are you doing it again? And we did have a chat of maybe we could offer this again. So maybe the 3 of us can discuss and see if that could work, and maybe we can host another one in the coming weeks. So I guess stay tuned, everybody. We'll have a chat and see if we can make that happen.
Yeah. What's the best way for people to find out? Can they drop you a line, Caylin, and sort of them, so that they you can email them easily or connect with them?
If I think probably the best thing is to connect with me on Facebook, because that's where the event will be posted. So if you just search Forest Schooled on Facebook, that's where I'll be announcing everything and creating an event and linking the 2 of you. That's how we did it last time, so that people in your channels can also be connected to it. So yeah, just give Forest Schooled a follow on Facebook. And if you aren't on Facebook and still want to know about it, you can always just reach out to me on my website. There's a contact form, forestschooled.com. So get in touch, and we'll make sure that you know about the next one.
Awesome.
Great.
Awesome. Wow.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much, everybody. That was wonderful.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for listening and watching.
All right. Gonna end broadcast now.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.